When my sister reached for the cord beside my hospital bed, I didn't think she was going to hurt me. I thought she was just annoyed. I thought she wanted the noise to stop. The machine beside me had been beeping softly, steady and calm, like a quiet reminder that I was still here. Still breathing. Still alive. I remember watching her hand move, slow and careless, and thinking how strange it was that someone could look at you and not really see you at all. This sound is irritating, she said. Her voice was flat, almost bored. You always fake being sick? Then she pulled the cord. The screen went dark. The beeping stopped, and the room fell into a silence so heavy it felt like it pressed down on my chest harder than the pain. Already there, I didn't scream. I didn't move. I didn't even cry. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, while something inside me finally broke in a quiet, invisible way. Welcome to Auntie Rose Narrates. Before today's story of betrayal and self-discovery, please subscribe and hit like to help these stories be heard. Drop your city or country in the comments. It always warms my heart. Now let's begin. My name is Monica O'Harris. I was 32 years old when I learned that some people can watch you suffer and still believe you deserve it. That moment didn't start in that hospital room. It didn't begin with the accident, or the wires, or the bruises blooming across my body. It started long before that, back when I was a child, trying to explain pain that no one wanted to hear about. The hospital smelled like cleaning chemicals and old air. The lights above me hummed without mercy. My body felt heavy, like it had been filled with wet sand. Every breath hurt, but I kept breathing anyway. I have learned how to do that. Breathe quietly, hurt quietly, exist without taking up too much space. My mother sat by the window, scrolling through her phone, not looking at me, not looking at the dark screen where my heartbeat used to be. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't tell my sister to stop. She didn't reach for my hand. And in that moment, lying there in silence, I realized something that scared me more than the accident ever did. This wasn't the first time my pain had been dismissed. It was just the first time it had almost cost me my life. I stayed still. I stayed quiet. And I wondered, with a strange calm settling over me, how many times a person can be ignored before they disappear completely. I grew up in a small, quiet neighborhood on the south side of the city, in a house that always looked fine from the outside. White paint, a narrow porch, a lawn my mother tried hard to keep neat. From the street, it looked like a place where nothing bad ever happened. People passed by and probably thought we were a normal family. A mother, 2 daughters. No noise, no trouble. Just another African-American family doing their best in America. Inside, things were different, but not in ways that were easy to explain. My mother, Ruth Harris, was a woman who believed strength meant silence. She worked long hours at a local insurance office, always tired, always carrying the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She had raised us mostly on her own after my father left when I was 9. She never talked much about him, just said some people aren't built to stay. Then she went back to work, back to surviving. My sister Danielle was 2 years older than me. From the time we were little, she was confident in a way I never learned to be. She spoke loudly. She laughed easily. She took up space without apologizing. Teachers liked her. Neighbors admired her. My mother leaned toward her without even realizing it, like a plant growing toward the sun. I was the quieter one, the one who sat back, the one who watched more than she spoke. As a child, I got sick often. Nothing dramatic, just small things. Stomach pain that came and went. Headaches that made the room spin. A tight feeling in my chest when I ran too fast or got too anxious. Doctors never found anything serious. They used words like stress and sensitivity. My mother nodded, paid the bills, and told me I'd be fine. Danielle didn't believe me. She just wants attention, she'd say when we were kids, rolling her eyes as I lay curled on the couch. Get up, Monica. You're fine. Over time, those words stuck to me. They followed me into adulthood. I started doubting my own body, questioning my own pain. I learned how to smile through discomfort, how to say I'm okay, even when I wasn't sure I was . By the time I reached my 30s, that habit was part of me. I worked as a receptionist at a dental office. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills. I liked the routine, the quiet hum of the waiting room, the predictable rhythm of days passing. My coworkers were kind in small ways. They asked how I was. They noticed when I looked tired. Sometimes those small kindnesses felt heavier than big gestures ever could. I never married, never had children. Not because I didn't want love, but because I was always afraid of being too much, too weak, too fragile. I told myself I was independent, that I liked my life simple. But the truth was, I didn't trust anyone enough to believe they would stay when things got hard. Danielle, on the other hand, married young. She had 2 children, a busy life, a loud house. She called her mother often, mostly to complain or ask for help. Ruth always answered, always showed up. I told myself it didn't hurt, but it did. We didn't fight openly. That wasn't our way. Our family didn't yell. We didn't slam doors. We let things sit. We let silence do the damage for us. When I visited my mother, I usually sat at the kitchen table while she cooked. She talked about work, about Danielle's kids, about bills and weather and small things, rarely about me. If I mentioned feeling tired or unwell, she'd nod and say, "You've always been sensitive." Then she'd change the subject. I stopped mentioning it. The accident happened on a Tuesday evening in early fall. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that makes everything feel slower. I was driving home from work, thinking about nothing in particular, when a truck ran a red light. I remember the sound first, metal crushing metal, a violent jolt, then spinning, then someone shouting my name, though I don't know how they knew it. I woke up hours later in the hospital. Everything after that felt like it was happening to someone else. They told me my ribs were cracked, my leg badly bruised, my shoulder dislocated. Nothing life-threatening, they said. Just painful. Just something that would take time. They smiled like this was good news. I nodded. I always nod. My mother and sister arrived the next morning. Danielle walked in first, phone in hand. Ruth followed, quiet as ever. They looked around the room like they were assessing a problem they didn't ask for. "You're lucky," Danielle said. That car was old anyway. My mother sat by the window. They stayed for less than 30 minutes. After they left, the room felt colder. I stared at the ceiling and tried to convince myself I was grateful they came at all. The days that followed were slow. Nurses came and went. Machines hummed. Pain came in waves, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull. I pressed the call button only when absolutely necessary. I didn't want to bother anyone. That instinct ran deep. I thought a lot during those hours. About childhood. About how often I'd been told I was exaggerating. About how easy it was for people to believe that because I never fought back. The morning it happened, the morning my sister pulled the cord, I was already exhausted. Not just from pain, but from years of being unseen. Danielle stood at the foot of my bed. Ruth sat by the window. The machine beeped softly, and for the first time in my life, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet understanding. This wasn't just about an accident. It was about a lifetime of being dismissed, and I didn't know yet how much that moment would change everything. After the cord was plugged back in and the machines began to hum again, no one spoke about what had happened. A nurse came in, adjusted something, and frowned softly at the loose wire before fixing it. She didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. Danielle stepped back like nothing unusual had occurred. My mother stayed by the window, her reflection faint in the glass, her face unreadable. Silence settled over the room again. But it was different now. Thicker, heavier. It felt like something had been placed between us. Something no one wanted to touch. Danielle checked her phone. "I have to pick up the kids soon," she said, like she was reminding us of an appointment we'd all agreed on. My mother nodded. We shouldn't stay too long anyway. No one asked if I wanted them to stay. When they left, I watched the door close slowly behind them. The soft click sounded louder than it should have. I stared at that door for a long time until my eyes burned and my chest felt tight again. I told myself not to cry. Crying would only prove what Danielle always said, that I was dramatic, that I made things bigger than they were dots, so I breathed. Slow, careful, quiet. The days that followed blurred together. Nurses changed shifts. Doctors came in with calm voices and practiced smiles. They explained things I half listened to. Recovery times, pain management, physical therapy later on. I nodded at the right moments. I thanked them. I tried to be the good patient, the easy one. Danielle visited once more that week. She stood near the door, arms crossed, like she was prepared to leave at any moment. "You look better," she said. I didn't know how to answer that. Better than what? Better than being unconscious? Better than being ignored? "I still hurt," I said carefully. She sighed. "Well, yeah, you were in an accident, but you're fine. You're always fine." There it was again. That word. Fine, as if pain only counted when it was visible, as if bruises under skin didn't matter. My mother sat in the same chair by the window, same posture, same silence. I wanted to ask her something then. I wanted to ask why she never defended me, why she never corrected Danielle, why she never said, "That's enough." But I didn't. I never did. When I was discharged, my mother insisted I stay at her house for a few days. Not because she said she wanted me there, but because it made sense. Danielle agreed. She said it was practical, logical, easier. I thought a lot during those hours. About childhood. About how often I'd been told I was exaggerating. About how easy it was for people to believe that because I never fought back. The morning it happened, the morning my sister pulled the cord, I was already exhausted. Not just from pain, but from years of being unseen. Danielle stood at the foot of my bed. Ruth sat by the window. The machine beeped softly, and for the first time in my life, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet understanding. This wasn't just about an accident. It was about a lifetime of being dismissed, and I didn't know yet how much that moment would change everything. After the cord was plugged back in, and the machines began to hum again, no one spoke about what had happened. A nurse came in, adjusted something, and frowned softly at the loose wire before fixing it. She didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. Danielle stepped back like nothing unusual had occurred. My mother stayed by the window, her reflection faint in the glass, her face unreadable. Silence settled over the room again. But it was different now. Thicker, heavier. It felt like something had been placed between us. Something no one wanted to touch. Danielle checked her phone. "I have to pick up the kids soon," she said, like she was reminding us of an appointment we'd all agreed on. My mother nodded. We shouldn't stay too long anyway. No one asked if I wanted them to stay. When they left, I watched the door close slowly behind them. The soft click sounded louder than it should have. I stared at that door for a long time until my eyes burned and my chest felt tight again. I told myself not to cry. Crying would only prove what Danielle always said, that I was dramatic, that I made things bigger than they were. So I breathed. Slow, careful, quiet. The days that followed blurred together. Nurses changed shifts. Doctors came in with calm voices and practiced smiles. They explained things I half listened to. Recovery times, pain management, physical therapy later on. I nodded at the right moments. I thanked them. I tried to be the good patient, the easy one. Danielle visited once more that week. She stood near the door, arms crossed, like she was prepared to leave at any moment. "You look better," she said. I didn't know how to answer that. Better than what? Better than being unconscious? Better than being ignored? "I still hurt," I said carefully. She sighed. "Well, yeah. You were in an accident, but you're fine. You're always fine." There it was again. That word, fine. As if pain only counted when it was visible. As if bruises under skin didn't matter. My mother sat in the same chair by the window. Same posture, same silence. I wanted to ask her something then. I wanted to ask why she never defended me, why she never corrected Danielle, why she never said, "That's enough." But I didn't. I never did. When I was discharged, my mother insisted I stay at her house for a few days. Not because she said she wanted me there, but because it made sense. Danielle agreed. She said it was practical, logical, easier. Those were words they liked. Words that left no room for feelings. My mother's house smelled the same as it always had. Cleaning spray and old furniture. Everything in its place. Nothing soft or inviting. My old bedroom had been turned into a storage space. Boxes stacked against the walls. I slept on the couch. The first night, I woke up in pain, my ribs aching with every breath. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle. I thought about calling out for my mother. Then I remembered all the times I had called out as a child. From my bed, from the bathroom floor, from the couch, and how often the answer had been silence. So I stayed quiet. In the mornings. My mother moved around the kitchen, making coffee, listening to the radio. She asked if I wanted toast. She asked if I needed my medication. She never asked how I felt. Not really. Danielle stopped by one afternoon with her kids. The house filled with noise, laughter, complaints, toys hitting the floor. She talked over me while I sat on the couch, my leg propped up, trying not to wince. "See," she said to my mother, "she's fine." Sitting up, talking. Doctors always make things sound worse than they are. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking slightly. I folded them together to hide it. Later that day, when everyone left, my mother washed dishes in silence. I stood nearby, unsure of where to put myself. "Mom," I said softly. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. When Danielle pulled the cord, that wasn't okay. She paused, just for a moment. Then she kept washing. She didn't mean anything by it, she said. "You know how she is?" That sentence followed me everywhere. "You know how she is?" As if that explained everything. As if it erased what had happened. But it scared me, I said. What if something had gone wrong? My mother dried her hands slowly. She didn't look at me. "You've always been sensitive, Monica." The words landed the way they always did, heavy. Final. I realized then that no matter how carefully I explained myself, it wouldn't matter. The story about me had already been written. I was the fragile one, the exaggerator. The problem, I went back to my apartment a few days later, still sore, still tired, but relieved to be alone. Silence there felt different, kinder. It didn't judge me. It didn't dismiss me. It just existed, But the tension followed me. Danielle began calling more often. Not to check on me, but to remind me of things. Bills I might forget. Appointments I might miss. She spoke to me the way one speaks to a child who can't be trusted. You sure you should be driving yet? Are you taking your meds correctly? You know, stress makes you imagine things. Each call left me drained out at work. I struggled to keep up. Sitting too long hurt. Standing too long hurt. Smiling through it all hurt most of all. My manager suggested I take more time off. I didn't want to. Time off felt like weakness, like proof. One afternoon, after a long shift, I found myself parked outside my mother's house without remembering the drive there. I sat in the car, engine off, hands on the wheel, unsure why I'd come. Maybe I hoped something would be different. Inside, Danielle was there again, sitting at the table, talking loudly. My mother listened. Honestly, Danielle said, she's always been like this, making things harder than they need to be. They both turned when I walked in. Danielle smiled. Speak of the devil. Something inside me tightened. I'm not making this up, I said before I could stop myself. My voice shook, but I didn't lower it. I was hurt. I was scared. Danielle laughed softly. See, dramatic. I looked at my mother. Really looked at her. At the lines in her face. At the way she avoided my eyes. Mom, I said, I need you to hear me. She sighed. I don't want conflict. That was it. That was the truth. She didn't want conflict more than she wanted to protect me. I left without saying goodbye. That night, alone in my apartment, I replayed everything. The hospital room, the dark screen, the silence, the years leading up to it. I realized how small moments had stacked on top of each other. Words, looks, shrugs, each one tiny on its own. Together, unbearable, I stopped answering Danielle's calls. I answered my mother's less and less. The distance wasn't planned. It just happened, slowly, quietly, like everything else in my life, but the tension didn't fade. It grew. It weighed a dot because beneath all of it, there was a truth I hadn't fully faced yet. And when it finally surfaced, it would change the way I saw my family forever. And that moment was closer than I realized. That the call came late on a Sunday evening, when the sky outside my apartment had already turned dark and quiet. I had been sitting on the couch with my leg propped up, a blanket pulled over me, trying to ignore the dull ache that never fully went away. The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt, how rare that peace had become. When my phone rang, I almost didn't answer. It was my mother. Her voice sounded tired, more tired than usual. Monica, she said, Danielle's having a hard time. I closed my eyes. I already felt the shift, the familiar pull, the way everything always moved back toward my sister. What kind of hard time? I asked. She's overwhelmed, my mother said. The kids, work, life, she needs help. I waited. My chest felt tight again, that familiar pressure. And you want me to... I asked gently. There was a pause. I was hoping you could come stay a few days, my mother said. Just until things calm down. I almost laughed, but no sound came out. I was still healing. Still in pain. Still learning how to walk without wincing. And yet, somehow, I was being asked to support the very people who had dismissed me when I needed them most. I don't think I can, I said quietly. The silence on the other end stretched. You're holding on to things, my mother finally said. That's not healthy. Those words landed harder than I expected. I wasn't holding on to things. I was carrying them alone. I need time, I said. I need space. My mother sighed. You've always been distant. That sentence hurt more than anything else she'd said. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. My hands were shaking again. Not from pain this time, but from something deeper. Something that had been building for years. The next day, Danielle showed up at my apartment unannounced. I heard the knock and felt my stomach drop. Slow, heavy. I considered pretending I wasn't home. But before I could decide, she knocked again, louder. When I opened the door, she walked right past me like she owned the place. "You didn't answer your phone," she said, sitting down on the couch. "Mom's worried." I leaned against the wall, careful with my leg. "I asked for space," I said. She waved her hand. "You're overreacting, again." Something in me snapped, just a little. "Why did you pull the cord?" I asked suddenly. She froze for a second, then laughed. "Oh my God, you're still on that?" "Yes," I said. My voice was calm, but my heart was racing. "Why did you do it?" She shrugged. "I told you. The noise was annoying. And you were fine." "I wasn't fine," I said. That machine was monitoring my heart. She rolled her eyes. "Doctors hook people up to all kinds of stuff they don't need." I took a slow breath. "You could have hurt me." Her smile faded. "Just a little. You always do this," she said. "You twist things. Make yourself the victim." That word echoed in my head. Victim. I realized then that she truly believed it. That in her mind, I wasn't someone who got hurt. I was someone who caused inconvenience. "I needed you," I said quietly. "Just once?" She stood up. "I don't have time for this." As she walked toward the door, she turned back. "You know," she said, "Mom always knew you'd turn out like this, fragile, dependent." The door closed behind her before I could respond. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my back against the door, tears finally coming. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, silent, the kind of crying that comes when something long buried finally breaks free. Later that week, I had a follow-up appointment at the hospital. A different doctor this time, younger, quieter. He looked at my chart longer than most had. "Have you ever been evaluated for chronic pain or anxiety-related conditions?" He asked gently. I shook my head. "Your symptoms," he said. "They're consistent. They're real." Real. That word felt like air filling my lungs for the first time. "You weren't exaggerating," he added. "You've likely been compensating for years." I left the hospital with paperwork in my hand and a strange feeling in my chest. Relief mixed with grief, because validation, when it comes late, carries its own kind of pain. I wanted to tell my mother. I wanted to tell her that a professional had finally said what I'd been trying to explain my whole life. So I went to her house. Danielle was there again. I stood in the living room, holding the papers, my hands trembling. "I wasn't making it up," I said. The doctor said. Danielle interrupted me. "So now you have a label. Great." My mother looked up the papers, but didn't take them. "I just want you to acknowledge it," I said. "Just say you believe me." She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "I believe you feel this way," she said carefully. That wasn't belief. That was avoidance dressed up as kindness. "I needed you to protect me," I said, my voice breaking. When she pulled that cord, when she laughed, when she said I was faking, my mother looked away. "I did my best," she said, and in that moment, I understood something that hurt more than anger ever could. Her best had never included me. Folded the papers and put them back in my bag. My body felt tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "I can't do this anymore," I said softly. Danielle scoffed. "Here we go." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, at the confidence, at the certainty, at the way she had never once questioned her place in the world. "This isn't about you," I said. "It never was." I turned to my mother. "I love you," I said, "but I'm done trying to convince you that I matter." I walked out of that house with my heart pounding and my hands shaking, but something else was there too. Something new. Clarity. I stopped calling. I stopped explaining. I stopped apologizing for needing care. Weeks passed. Then months. Therapy became part of my life. Slowly, carefully, I learned words for things I'd always felt but never named. Neglect, emotional dismissal, survival patterns. One afternoon, during a session, my therapist said something that stayed with me. Sometimes, she said, the betrayal isn't the loud act. It's the quiet pattern of choosing not to see someone. I thought of the hospital room, the dark screen, the silence. That was the moment everything changed. Not because they apologized, not because they understood, but because I finally did. And as painful as that realization was, it opened a door I hadn't known existed, door that led away from them. And toward myself. But healing is never as simple as walking away. And what came next would test everything I thought I had learned. The quiet that followed my decision felt unfamiliar at first. Not empty, not lonely, just different. For so long, my life had been shaped by reaction, waiting for a call, bracing for a comment, preparing myself to be misunderstood. Now there was space where those expectations used to live. Space can be gentle, but it can also be frightening when you are not used to it. I woke up one morning and realized no one had spoken over me the day before. No one had questioned my pain. No one had told me I was too sensitive. The realization made my chest ache in a way that was almost sweet. Healing did not arrive all at once. It came in small moments, uneven ones. Some days I felt strong, steady, sure of my choice. Other days I missed my mother so deeply it felt like a physical pull. I missed the idea of her more than the reality. I missed the version of her I had hoped she could be. Therapy became a quiet anchor in my week. A place where I did not have to explain why something hurt, where I didn't have to prove anything. My therapist listened without interrupting. She asked questions that made me pause. She never rushed me. One afternoon, she asked, "What does forgiveness mean to you?" I thought about it for a long time. I said slowly. I always thought forgiveness meant letting people back in. She nodded. And now? Now I think it means letting myself stop carrying the blame. That realization stayed with me. My body continued to heal slowly. Physical therapy was painful but honest. Pain with purpose felt different from pain dismissed. Each small improvement felt like proof, not to anyone else, but to myself, that my body had never been lying to me. Weeks turned into months. I stopped checking my phone for messages that weren't coming. My mother called once, left a voicemail. Her voice sounded unsure. She said she hoped I was doing well. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask to see me. She just said she missed me. I listened to that message more than once. I didn't call back right away. When I did finally return the call, it was brief, polite, careful. We spoke about the weather, about small things. I did not mention the hospital. I did not mention the cord. I did not mention the years of silence. Not because they didn't matter, but because I was no longer willing to fight for acknowledgement. After we hung up, I cried. Not because the call went badly, but because it went exactly how I knew it would. I began building a life that did not revolve around being understood by people who refused to listen. I spent more time with coworkers who noticed when I was tired. I accepted help when it was offered. I practiced saying, "I need rest," without apologizing afterward. There were setbacks. Nights when memories surfaced without warning. The sound of a monitor beeping in my head. The image of a dark screen. Those moments still shook me, but now I had tools. I grounded myself. I reminded myself where I was. I reminded myself that I survived. One evening, months later, I received a message from Danielle. Just a few words. "Mom says you won't talk to her." This is getting ridiculous. I stared at the screen for a long time. In the past, I would have explained. I would have defended myself. I would have tried to soften her anger. This time, I didn't respond. That silence felt powerful in a way I had never known before. Not long after that, my mother was hospitalized briefly for exhaustion. Nothing serious, but enough to scare her. A nurse called me as her emergency contact. I went. Standing outside her hospital room brought everything rushing back. The smell, the lights, the quiet tension. I paused before going in, taking a breath. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. She smiled weakly when she saw me. "You came." "I did," I said. We sat in silence for a while. This time, I didn't feel the need to fill it. "I never meant to hurt you," she said finally. I looked at her. Really looked. "I know," I said. And I meant it. That was the truth. She hadn't meant to, but intention had never erased impact. I didn't know how to handle things, she continued. "I thought staying neutral was safer." "For who?" I asked gently. She didn't answer. "I don't need you to be perfect," I said. "I needed you to see me." Her eyes filled with tears. "I see you now," she whispered. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. Another part knew that seeing once did not undo a lifetime of looking away. "I'm glad," I said. "But I'm still learning how to take care of myself." She nodded. That visit didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the past, but it shifted something. Not into closeness, but into honesty. And that mattered. I did not see Danielle. She did not come. When my mother was discharged, I helped arrange things from a distance. Rides, groceries, calls. I stayed involved without stepping back into old roles. Forgiveness, I learned, was not a single moment. It was a practice. A choice I made again and again. Not to excuse, not to forget, but to release myself from the need for resolution that might never come. One afternoon, while walking slowly through a park near my apartment, I realized something simple and profound. I was no longer waiting. Not waiting for an apology. Not waiting for approval. Not waiting to be believed. I was living. The accident had broken my body for a time, but it had also broken something else. The story I had been told about myself. The one where I was fragile. Too much. Imagining things, that story no longer fit. I was careful now, gentle with myself. I rested when I needed to. I spoke when something felt wrong. I listened to my body without shame. And slowly, quietly, I felt whole in a way I never had before. There were still unanswered questions, still moments of grief, but there was also peace, a steady growing peace. One night, as I lay in bed, listening to the quiet hum of my apartment, I thought back to that hospital room, to the silence after the monitor went dark. I realized something then. That moment did not define the end of my life. It marked the beginning of my understanding. And understanding I was learning was the first step toward freedom. But some endings don't come quietly, and one final moment would bring everything full circle. Time has a way of softening sharp edges, but it doesn't erase the shape of what once hurt. I still think about that hospital room sometimes, not with fear anymore and not with anger. I think about it the way you think about a place you once survived, quietly, with distance, with understanding. Life didn't suddenly become easy after everything changed. Healing never works that way. Some mornings, I still wake up stiff and sore. Some nights, I still replay conversations I wish had gone differently. But now, when those thoughts come, they don't pull me under. They pass through me like clouds, leaving space behind them. I learned how to listen to myself. Really listen. Not just to my body, but to my feelings. When something feels wrong, I don't push it away anymore. I don't tell myself I'm imagining things. I pause, I breathe, I trust what I feel. That trust took years to build, and I guard it carefully now that my relationship with my mother settled into something quieter and more honest. We speak occasionally, sometimes about small things, sometimes about deeper ones. She tries in her own way. I see that now. I also see her limits. Loving her no longer means losing myself, and that balance has been one of the hardest lessons of my life. Danielle and I do not speak. That used to feel like failure, like something unfinished. Now it feels like a boundary that saved me. I don't wish her harm. I don't replay arguments in my head anymore. I simply accept that some people cannot meet you where you are, no matter how clearly you explain yourself, and that is not your fault. I began to notice how many people live this way, quietly doubting themselves because someone else once told them their pain was too much, or not real, or inconvenient. We carry those voices with us for years, mistaking them for our own. Letting go of that voice was the greatest gift I ever gave myself. I started doing small things just because they brought me peace. Walking in the early morning when the world is still, cooking simple meals and taking my time, sitting by the window when it rains. None of it looks dramatic from the outside, but inside, it feels like freedom. There was a day, almost a year after the accident, when I went back to the hospital for a routine checkup. The same building, the same long hallways. As I waited, I noticed the steady beeping of a monitor in a nearby room. For a moment, my chest tightened, then I realized something. The sound no longer scared me, it was just a sound. I smiled to myself, surprised by the calm that followed. Healing doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up quietly in moments you don't expect. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace, the one who believed love meant endurance. I don't judge her. She did the best she could with what she knew at the time, but I am not her anymore. I am someone who understands that pain does not need permission to be real, that needing care is not weakness, that being believed should never be something you have to earn. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this: you do not owe anyone your suffering. You do not have to stay in places where your hurt is dismissed, and you are allowed to walk away, even quietly, even without closure. Especially then. The night before my birthday, I lit a small candle in my apartment. Just one. I watched the flame flicker and thought about how many times I had dimmed myself so others would feel comfortable. How often I had mistaken silence for strength. I made a promise to myself then. A simple one: I would not abandon myself again. The world is still imperfect. People still misunderstand. Life still brings pain. But I meet those moments differently now, with gentleness, with honesty, with the knowledge that my story belongs to me. And when I think back to that hospital room, to the moment the screen went dark, I no longer see it as the place where everything almost ended. See it as the place where something finally began, a quieter life, a truer one, a life where my voice matters, even when it shakes. If you are listening to this and you have ever been told that your pain isn't real, I hope you hear this clearly. It is real. You're real, and you deserve to be seen. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining and start living. And sometimes the softest endings are the ones that lead you home to yourself. That is where my story ends, and that is where my life truly began.